Question 1. An organization is conducting a business impact analysis, BIA, to inform its business continuity strategy. During the BIA, it identifies several critical business functions. To effectively prioritize recovery efforts and determine the necessary resources, the organization must establish the maximum tolerable period of disruption, MTPD, for each function. What is the fundamental determinant used to set the MTPD for a critical business function, considering the potential consequences across financial, operational, reputational, and legal impact categories? Option A. The maximum tolerable period of disruption, MTPD, for the business function. Option B. The number of regulatory breaches identified in the previous year. Option C. The perceived severity of reputational damage by senior management. Option D. The total financial loss incurred during a simulated incident. The correct answer is A. The maximum tolerable period of disruption, MTPD, for the business function. Explanation. The process of identifying and categorizing the potential impacts of disruptive incidents is a foundational element of business continuity management, as outlined in ISO 22301/2019. This involves a thorough analysis to understand how different types of disruptions could affect an organization's objectives. When assessing these impacts, it's crucial to consider various dimensions. Financial impacts relate to direct monetary losses, increased costs, and reduced revenue. Operational impacts concern the inability to perform critical activities and deliver products or services. Reputational impacts involve damage to the organization's image, trust, and stakeholder relationships. Legal and regulatory impacts stem from non-compliance with laws, contractual obligations, and potential penalties or litigation. The objective is to establish clear criteria for determining the severity and duration of these impacts, which then informs the prioritization of business activities and the development of appropriate response and recovery strategies. This systematic approach ensures that the business continuity plan is robust and addresses the most significant threats to the organization's viability and resilience. The question asks for the primary driver in establishing the acceptable level of disruption for critical activities, which is directly tied to the maximum tolerable period of disruption, MTPD, for each activity. The MTPD is derived from the impact analysis and dictates how long an activity can be unavailable before severe consequences manifest. Therefore, understanding the potential consequences across financial, operational, reputational, and legal dimensions is paramount to defining this acceptable downtime. Question 2. Following a comprehensive management review of the BCMS at Omnicorp, a multinational logistics provider, the executive leadership team discussed several key performance indicators, including the results of recent business continuity exercises, changes in the threat landscape affecting global supply chains, and the effectiveness of current incident response procedures. The review also considered feedback from the internal audit program and the performance of outsourced critical service providers. The team identified areas where the BCMS could be strengthened to better align with evolving business objectives and regulatory compliance, particularly concerning data privacy during disaster recovery operations, as mandated by emerging regional data protection laws. What are the essential components that must be captured as outputs from this management review to ensure the continual improvement of Omnicorp's BCMS? Option A. Updated risk assessment register and the revised business continuity strategy document. Option B. Recommendations for future training programs and a revised list of critical business functions. Option C. Decisions and actions related to opportunities for improvement, any need for changes to the BCMS, and implications for resource needs. Option D. A summary of all discussed topics, a list of attendees, and the date of the next scheduled review. The correct answer is C. Decisions and actions related to opportunities for improvement, any need for changes to the BCMS, and implications for resource needs. Explanation. The management review is a critical input for the continual improvement of the Business Continuity Management System, BCMS. According to ISO 22301/2019, specifically Clause 9.3.3, the outputs of the management review must include decisions and actions related to opportunities for improvement, any need for changes to the BCMS, and the implications for resource needs. These outputs are not merely a record of discussions, but are actionable items that drive the BCMS forward. The commitment to continual improvement, a fundamental principle of management systems, is directly addressed through the formalization of these outputs. The review ensures that the BCMS remains suitable, adequate, and effective in achieving its intended outcomes, which includes adapting to changing organizational needs, threats, and opportunities. Therefore, documenting these specific elements ensures that the organization can track progress, assign responsibilities, and verify the implementation of corrective actions and enhancements, thereby fulfilling the requirements for effective governance and improvement of the BCMS. Question 3. An organization has identified its critical customer support function, which requires immediate availability of trained personnel and access to a secure customer database during a major disruption. The Business Impact Analysis, BIA, has determined a maximum tolerable downtime of 1 hour for this function, with a recovery time objective RTO of 30 minutes. Considering the resource requirements stipulated by ISO 22301-2019, which of the following best encapsulates the comprehensive set of resources that must be provisioned to meet these continuity objectives? Option A. Availability of skilled customer support staff with appropriate training, secure and readily accessible customer database, adequate communication channels, and necessary financial allocation for overtime and potential third-party support. Option B. Detailed organizational chart for the business continuity team, a list of critical suppliers for IT hardware, and an agreement with an external call center to handle overflow customer inquiries. Option C. Regular testing of the customer support function's IT infrastructure, documented training materials for new employees, and a contingency fund set aside for unforeseen operational expenses during a crisis. Option D. A comprehensive disaster recovery plan detailing step-by-step procedures for database restoration and staff relocation, along with a sufficient budget for purchasing new hardware if existing infrastructure fails. The correct answer is A. Availability of skilled customer support staff with appropriate training, secure and readily accessible customer database, adequate communication channels, and necessary financial allocation for overtime and potential third-party support. Explanation: the fundamental principle of ISO 22301-2019 is to ensure that an organization can continue to operate its critical activities at an acceptable predefined level following a disruptive incident. Clause 8. 2. 3. Resource requirements of the standard mandates that an organization shall determine and provide the resources necessary to establish, implement, maintain, and continually improve its business continuity management system, BCMS. This includes identifying the specific human resources, infrastructure, technology, information, and financial resources required to support the identified critical business functions and their corresponding business continuity strategies. Effectiveness of these resources is paramount. For instance, if a critical function relies on specialized personnel with unique skills for its recovery, the availability and training of these individuals are direct resource requirements. Similarly, if the recovery strategy involves specific IT systems, the provision and maintenance of those systems, including their power, cooling, and network connectivity, constitute infrastructure and technology resource requirements. The standard emphasizes that these requirements are derived from the Business Impact Analysis (BIA) and the Risk Assessment (RA), which inform the selection of appropriate business continuity strategies. Therefore, the identification and provision of all necessary resources, encompassing personnel, infrastructure, technology, information, and financial aspects, are essential for the successful implementation and operation of the BCMS to meet the organization's continuity objectives. Question 4. When evaluating the effectiveness of a supplier performance monitoring program designed to support a business continuity management system compliant with ISO 22301-2019, which of the following actions would most directly demonstrate adherence to the standard's intent regarding managing outsourced activities? Option A. Prioritizing contract renewals based on the lowest cost offered by suppliers, with minimal consideration for their documented business continuity plans. Option B. Conducting an annual comprehensive audit of all supplier facilities, irrespective of their criticality to business operations. Option C. Solely relying on supplier-provided self-assessments to gauge their business continuity capabilities and compliance. Option D. Regularly reviewing supplier performance against predefined continuity-related key performance indicators, KPI, and initiating corrective actions for any significant deviations. The correct answer is D. Regularly reviewing supplier performance against predefined continuity-related key performance indicators, KPI, and initiating corrective actions for any significant deviations. Explanation: the core of effective supplier performance monitoring within an ISO 22301-2019 framework lies in establishing clear, measurable, and actionable key performance indicators, KPI, that directly relate to the supplier's contribution to the organization's business continuity objectives. These KPIs should not be generic, but rather tailored to the specific critical activities supported by the supplier and the potential impact of their failure. For instance, if a supplier provides a critical IT service, KPIs might include uptime percentage, response time to incidents, and data recovery success rates within agreed-upon timeframes. Clause 8.1.3 of ISO 22301-2019 emphasizes the need to establish, implement, and maintain a process for determining and managing the impact of disruptions to outsourced activities. This process inherently requires ongoing evaluation of supplier performance against defined criteria that reflect this impact. The objective is to ensure that suppliers maintain the necessary capabilities to support the organization's continuity of operations during disruptive events. This involves regular review of performance data, communication with suppliers regarding any deviations, and, where necessary, implementing corrective actions or revising contractual agreements to align with evolving business continuity requirements. The focus is on proactive identification of risks associated with supplier performance and ensuring that these risks are mitigated to maintain the resilience of the organization's critical functions. Therefore, the most effective approach involves a continuous feedback loop, where performance data informs future supplier engagement and risk management strategies. Question 5. An organization is reviewing its business continuity program following a minor IT system failure that impacted customer support for 3 hours. During the business impact analysis, it was determined that the customer support function has a maximum tolerable period of disruption, MTPD, of 8 hours. The recovery time objective, RTO, was set at 6 hours to ensure that customer service levels remain acceptable. However, during the incident, the IT department's primary data center experienced a power outage, and the secondary data center, which houses the customer support application, was also affected due to a shared network dependency. This shared dependency was not adequately identified during the initial BIA. Considering the principles of ISO 22301-2019 and the scenario, what is the most critical deficiency in the business impact analysis that contributed to the extended disruption and the need for a revised approach to identifying critical functions? Option A. Overestimation of the maximum tolerable period of disruption, MTPD, for the customer support function. Option B. Neglecting to involve external stakeholders in the business impact analysis process. Option C. Insufficient analysis of interdependencies between IT infrastructure components and critical business functions. Option D. Failure to establish a sufficiently short recovery time objective, RTO, for the customer support function. Correct answer is C. Insufficient analysis of interdependencies between IT infrastructure components and critical business functions. Explanation: the process of identifying critical business functions and processes within an ISO 22301-2019 framework involves a systematic analysis to determine which activities are essential for the organization's continued operation and survival in the face of disruptive incidents. This analysis typically begins with understanding the organization's objectives, strategy, and stakeholder expectations, including legal and regulatory requirements. The core of this identification is the Business Impact Analysis, BIA. The BIA quantifies the potential consequences of disruption over time for each business activity. Key metrics derived from the BIA include the maximum tolerable period of disruption, MTPD, which is the absolute longest period an activity can be unavailable without causing unacceptable consequences, and the recovery time objective, RTO, which is the target time within which an activity must be restored after a disruption to avoid unacceptable consequences. The relationship between these is crucial. RTO must always be less than or equal to MTPD. Furthermore, The BIA identifies the dependencies between activities, resources, and third-party services that support them. Activities with shorter MTPD and RTOs, higher impact levels e.g. Financial, reputational, legal, and critical dependencies are prioritized as the most critical. The output of this phase directly informs the development of business continuity strategies and plans, ensuring that resources are allocated effectively to protect the most vital functions. Consideration of legal and regulatory obligations, such as data privacy laws, e.g. GDPR, or industry-specific compliance mandates, is integrated throughout this process to ensure that recovery efforts meet all external requirements, thereby preventing penalties and maintaining stakeholder trust. Question 6. A global logistics firm, Swift Ship Solutions, is implementing its ISO 22301-2019 compliant business continuity management system, BCMS. The Chief Operating Officer, COO, is concerned about the practical application of the BCMS during a simulated cyber attack that disrupts their primary booking system. While the technical recovery team is well-trained, customer service representatives, who are the first point of contact for clients experiencing delays, have received only a brief overview of the BCMS policy. What is the most critical gap in Swift Ship Solutions BCMS regarding competence, awareness, and communication in this scenario? Option A. Lack of a formal documented process for identifying and assessing the competence of all BCMS stakeholders. Option B. Absence of an external communication plan for informing regulatory bodies about the incident. Option C. Inadequate frequency of business continuity tabletop exercises involving all departments. Option D. Insufficient awareness and targeted communication, training for customer-facing staff on BCMS procedures and their specific roles during a disruption. Correct answer is D. Insufficient awareness and targeted communication training for customer-facing staff on BCMS procedures and their specific roles during a disruption. Explanation. The core of establishing effective competence, awareness, and communication within a business continuity management system, BCMS, under ISO 22301-2019, lies in ensuring that all relevant personnel understand their roles, importance of business continuity, and how to act during disruptive events. This involves a systematic approach to identifying the necessary competencies, providing appropriate training and awareness programs, and establishing clear communication channels. The standard emphasizes that an organization shall determine the necessary competence for personnel doing work under its control that affects its BCMS performance. This determination should consider education, training, and experience. Furthermore, the organization must ensure that personnel are aware of the business continuity policy, their contribution to the BCMS effectiveness, and the implications of not conforming to BCMS requirements. Communication, both internal and external, is vital for disseminating information, coordinating responses, and maintaining stakeholder confidence. A structured approach to communication planning, including identifying what, when, how, and to whom information is communicated, is essential for a resilient BCMS. The effectiveness of these elements is not a one-time event, but requires ongoing evaluation and improvement, ensuring that the BCMS remains robust and adaptable to changing circumstances and organizational needs. Question 7. A multinational financial services firm, operating under strict regulatory compliance mandates from bodies like the Financial Conduct Authority, FCA, in the UK and the Securities and Exchange Commission, SEC, in the US, is reviewing its IT disaster recovery procedures following a simulated cyber attack that disrupted trading platforms for several hours. The firm's Business Continuity Management System, BCMS, has established a maximum tolerable period of disruption, MTPD, of 4 hours for its core trading systems, and a recovery time objective RTO of 2 hours for the associated databases. Their recovery point objective, RPO, for these critical data sets is near zero. Considering these parameters and the need to maintain customer confidence and regulatory adherence, which IT disaster recovery strategy would be the most appropriate initial focus for implementation and testing? Option A. Establishing a hot site facility with asynchronous data replication for non-critical applications and a cold site for less important departmental systems. Option B. Implementing a fully redundant, active-active data center architecture with synchronous data replication for all critical IT infrastructure and applications. Option C. focusing on detailed documentation of system dependencies and a phased restoration plan for IT services based on their criticality, utilizing off-site backups. Option D, developing a comprehensive manual workaround process for all IT systems, allowing business operations to continue with minimal digital support during an outage. The correct answer is B, implementing a fully redundant active-active data center architecture with synchronous data replication for all critical IT infrastructure and applications. Explanation: the core principle behind ISO 22301, 2019 Clause 8. 3.2, which deals with establishing business continuity strategies, is to select strategies that are appropriate to the organization's risk appetite, impact tolerance, and available resources. When considering IT disaster recovery procedures, the objective is to restore critical IT services within defined recovery time objectives, RTO, and recovery point objectives, RPO. A strategy that prioritizes the restoration of core operational systems, even if it means a phased approach to less critical applications, directly aligns with maintaining essential business functions and mitigating the most significant impacts. This involves identifying critical IT components, understanding their dependencies, and selecting recovery methods that meet the RTO/RPO targets without exceeding budget constraints or organizational capabilities. The process is iterative and requires validation through testing. The chosen strategy must be documented, implemented, and maintained as part of the overall Business Continuity Management System, BCMS. The rationale for selecting one strategy over another hinges on its effectiveness in achieving the required recovery levels for critical activities, considering factors like technological feasibility, cost-effectiveness, and the potential for residual risk. Question 8. A multinational logistics firm, Global Transit Solutions, has identified that its primary customer service and dispatch operations have an RTO of 4 hours and an RPO of 1 hour. The firm operates across multiple time zones and relies heavily on real-time tracking data. A recent business impact analysis indicates that a disruption to these functions could lead to significant financial losses and severe reputational damage within the first 2 hours of downtime. Considering the need for immediate data synchronization and continuous operational capability with minimal interruption, which work area recovery strategy would be most aligned with Global Transit Solutions' defined objectives and the principles of ISO 22301, 2019. Option A. Employing a mobile recovery unit that can be deployed to a pre-identified safe location to resume operations. Option B. Establishing a reciprocal agreement with a similar organization in a different geographic region for shared recovery facilities. Option C. Implementing a cold site that requires significant time for hardware setup and data restoration from recent backups. Option D. Utilizing a hot site with pre-installed hardware, software, and real-time data replication from the primary site. The correct answer is B. Establishing a reciprocal agreement with a similar organization in a different geographic region for shared recovery facilities. Explanation: the selection of a work area recovery strategy under ISO 22301, 2019 is fundamentally driven by the organization's business continuity objectives, specifically the recovery time objective RTO and recovery point objective RPO for critical business functions. These objectives dictate the required speed and fidelity of data restoration and operational resumption. For instance, a very short RTO, perhaps measured in minutes or a few hours, would necessitate a strategy that allows for immediate or near-immediate operational capability at an alternate site, such as a fully equipped hot site. Conversely, a longer RTO might permit less sophisticated and more cost-effective solutions like cold sites or reciprocal agreements. The availability and accessibility of critical resources, including personnel, technology, and information, are also paramount. The cost-effectiveness of the chosen strategy relative to the potential impact of disruption is a crucial balancing act. Regulatory and legal obligations, such as data residency requirements or specific service level agreements, can also constrain the available options. Therefore, the most appropriate strategy is one that demonstrably meets the defined RTO and RPO, is feasible given resource constraints, is cost-effective, and complies with all relevant legal and contractual commitments, all of which are informed by the business impact analysis and risk assessment. Question 9. During a simulated disaster recovery exercise for a financial services firm, the data restoration process for a critical customer database failed to meet the defined recovery time objective (RTO). An internal audit identified this as a nonconformity. What is the most appropriate immediate next step for the business continuity lead implementer to ensure the BCMS is robustly addressing this issue? Option A. Initiate a root cause analysis to understand why the data restoration process did not meet the RTO and subsequently develop and implement corrective actions. Option B. Schedule additional training sessions for the IT operations team on data backup and restoration procedures. Option C. Document the failure in the exercise report and escalate it to the IT department for their independent investigation and resolution. Option D. Immediately revise the RTO for the customer database to reflect the observed performance during the exercise. The correct answer is A. Initiate a root cause analysis to understand why the data restoration process did not meet the RTO and subsequently develop and implement corrective actions. Explanation. The core of addressing a nonconformity within an ISO 22301/2019 BCMS involves understanding the root cause and implementing appropriate actions. When a scenario presents a failure in a critical control identified during a business continuity exercise, the initial step is to determine why that control failed. This root cause analysis is paramount. Following the identification of the root cause, corrective actions are devised and implemented to eliminate the cause and prevent recurrence. The effectiveness of these corrective actions must then be verified. A nonconformity report serves as the formal record of this process, detailing the issue, the analysis, the actions taken, and the verification of their effectiveness. Simply documenting the failure or escalating it without analysis does not address the underlying systemic issue. Similarly, while training might be a corrective action, it's not the overarching process that encompasses the entire response to a nonconformity. The emphasis is on a systematic approach that includes analysis, action, and verification to ensure the BCMS remains effective and resilient. Question 10. An organization is preparing to conduct a tabletop exercise simulating a widespread cyber attack that has rendered its primary data center inoperable. The exercise is intended to test the activation of the disaster recovery plan and the communication cascade to key stakeholders. Considering the principles of effective business continuity exercise design as outlined in ISO 22301/2019, what is the most critical factor to ensure the exercise yields meaningful validation of the BCMS? Option A. The inclusion of complex financial modeling to assess the economic impact of the simulated event. Option B. The scenario's direct alignment with identified cyber threats and the business impact analysis findings. Option C. The participation of all employees in a full-scale simulation to gauge overall organizational readiness. Option D. The development of a detailed script with predetermined responses for each participant to ensure a smooth flow. The correct answer is B. The scenario's direct alignment with identified cyber threats and the business impact analysis findings. Explanation. The effectiveness of a business continuity exercise is directly linked to its ability to accurately simulate real-world disruptions. Clause 8.4 of ISO 22301/2019 mandates the conducting of exercises and tests to validate the effectiveness of the business continuity plans and procedures. The primary objective of these exercises is to identify gaps, weaknesses, and areas for improvement within the BCMS. A realistic scenario is crucial for eliciting genuine responses and uncovering latent issues that might not surface during less rigorous simulations. Without a clear linkage to potential threats identified in the risk assessment and business impact analysis, an exercise risks being irrelevant or failing to test the most critical aspects of the organization's resilience. The exercise should be designed to challenge the established response mechanisms, test communication protocols under pressure, and evaluate the efficacy of recovery strategies in a manner that mirrors plausible disruptive events. This alignment ensures that the lessons learned are actionable and contribute to a more robust and effective BCMS. Question 11. Considering the requirements for monitoring, measurement, analysis, and evaluation within ISO 22301/2019, What is the fundamental objective when an organization analyzes and evaluates the results derived from these activities to gauge the effectiveness of its business continuity management system? Option A. To compile a comprehensive report for regulatory bodies to demonstrate compliance with ISO 22301/2019 standards. Option B. To generate actionable insights for informed decision-making regarding the BCMS performance and to facilitate its continual improvement. Option C. To solely identify instances where business continuity plans failed to meet their intended objectives during simulated or actual disruptions. Option D. To determine the precise financial impact of all disruptive incidents, regardless of their severity or relevance to BCMS performance. The correct answer is B. To generate actionable insights for informed decision-making regarding the BCMS performance and to facilitate its continual improvement. Explanation. The effectiveness of a business continuity management system, BCMS, is evaluated through monitoring, measurement, analysis, and evaluation activities as mandated by ISO 22301/2019, specifically within Clause 9. 1. This clause emphasizes the need to determine what needs monitoring and measurement, the methods for monitoring, measurement, analysis, and evaluation, when these activities should be performed, and when the results should be analyzed and evaluated. The analysis and evaluation of performance and BCMS effectiveness are crucial for informed decision-making and continual improvement. This involves not just collecting data, but interpreting it to understand trends, identify deviations from planned performance, and assess the overall health and maturity of the BCMS. For instance, if a business continuity plan, BCP, activation exercise reveals a significant delay in restoring critical operations beyond the defined recovery time objective, RTO, this data must be analyzed to understand the root cause, which could be inadequate resource allocation, poorly defined procedures, or technological limitations. The evaluation then assesses the impact of this delay on the organization's ability to meet its business continuity objectives and legal or regulatory obligations, such as those related to data protection e.g., GDPR, or critical infrastructure resilience. The output of this evaluation informs corrective actions and strategic adjustments to the BCMS. Therefore, the primary purpose of analyzing and evaluating the results of monitoring and measurement is to provide insights into the BCMS performance and effectiveness, thereby supporting informed decision-making for improvement and ensuring alignment with the organization's strategic objectives and risk appetite. Question 12. When a BCMS lead implementer is tasked with enhancing the effectiveness of an established business continuity management system, which fundamental ISO 22301/2019 requirement most directly drives the iterative refinement and optimization of the BCMS overall performance? Option A. Continual improvement. Option B. Ensuring resources for the business continuity management system. Option C. Establishing the business continuity management system. Option D. Operating the business continuity management system. The correct answer is A. Continual improvement. Explanation. The core of ISO 22301/2019 is the Plan Do Check Act (PDCA) cycle. The standard mandates a continual improvement process for the business continuity management system, BCMS. Clause 10, Improvement, specifically addresses nonconformities and corrective actions, which are essential for addressing weaknesses identified during internal audits or from other sources. Clause 9, Performance Evaluation, requires monitoring, measurement, analysis, and evaluation of the BCMS. This includes internal audits and management review, which are key inputs for identifying areas needing improvement. Therefore, addressing nonconformities and implementing corrective actions, as driven by performance evaluation, is fundamental to the continual improvement of the BCMS. While establishing the BCMS Clause 4, operating it Clause 7, and ensuring resources Clause 8 are crucial, they represent the foundational and operational aspects. Continual improvement, however, is the mechanism by which the BCMS evolves and becomes more effective over time, directly stemming from the feedback loops created by performance evaluation and the subsequent actions taken to rectify issues. Question 13. A specialized electronics firm relies on a sole supplier for a unique, high-purity component essential for its flagship product line. This supplier is situated in a coastal area frequently affected by severe tropical storms, which have historically caused significant disruptions. The firm's risk management framework indicates a very low tolerance for any interruption to this specific component's availability, as it has direct, severe financial and reputational consequences. Considering the principles of ISO 22301, 2019, which risk treatment option would be the most appropriate primary response to manage this inherent supply chain vulnerability? Option A. Avoid the risk by discontinuing the production of the flagship product that requires this unique component, thereby eliminating the dependency. Option B. Mitigate the risk by increasing the on-site inventory of the component to a level that can sustain operations for an extended period, even during a prolonged supplier outage. Option C. Accept the risk, acknowledging that the cost of any potential disruption is less than the expense of establishing alternative supply chains or significant inventory buffers. Option D. Transfer the risk by diversifying the supplier base to include multiple providers located in geographically stable regions, supported by robust contractual clauses ensuring continuity. The correct answer is D. Transfer the risk by diversifying the supplier base to include multiple providers located in geographically stable regions, supported by robust contractual clauses ensuring continuity. Explanation. The scenario describes a situation where a critical supplier for a niche manufacturing process is located in a region prone to significant seismic activity. The business continuity team has identified this as a high-impact, high-likelihood risk. The organization's risk appetite is low for disruptions to this specific supply chain, as it directly impacts their ability to meet contractual obligations with major clients. Risk treatment options are defined as avoidance, ceasing the activity that gives rise to the risk; transfer, shifting the risk to another party, often through insurance or outsourcing; mitigation, taking action to reduce the likelihood or impact of the risk; acceptance, acknowledging the risk and deciding not to take action, usually when the cost of treatment outweighs the potential impact. In this context, the organization cannot simply avoid the supplier without ceasing a core part of its operations, which is not a viable option. Accepting the risk is not aligned with the low-risk appetite for this specific disruption. While mitigation strategies like maintaining higher inventory levels or identifying alternative suppliers are possible, they address the impact or likelihood rather than the inherent concentration of risk. The most direct and effective way to address the risk of a single, critical supplier in a high-risk geographic location, given the low-risk appetite, is to shift the reliance away from that single point of failure. This could involve diversifying the supplier base to include entities in more stable regions, or entering into contractual agreements that guarantee supply continuity from multiple sources, effectively transferring the burden of managing geographic risk to the suppliers or through contractual guarantees. Therefore, transferring the risk, by diversifying the supply chain and ensuring contractual resilience, best addresses the identified problem. Question 14. When developing the project plan for establishing a business continuity management system, BCMS, in alignment with ISO 22301-2019, which fundamental activity must be completed first to ensure the subsequent phases of business impact analysis and risk assessment are appropriately focused and comprehensive? Option A. Defining and documenting the scope of the BCMS. Option B. Identifying and evaluating all potential threats and vulnerabilities relevant to the organization. Option C. Conducting a detailed business impact analysis for all identified organizational activities. Option D. Establishing the top management's commitment and policy. The correct answer is A. Defining and documenting the scope of the BCMS. Explanation. The project plan for implementing a business continuity management system, BCMS, according to ISO 22301-2019, requires a structured approach that aligns with the standard's clauses and principles. A critical aspect of this planning is defining the scope of the BCMS, which involves identifying the organization's activities, products, and services that will be covered. This definition directly influences the subsequent stages, such as business impact analysis, BIA, and risk assessment, RA. The scope must be clearly documented and communicated, ensuring that all relevant stakeholders understand the boundaries of the BCMS. Without a well-defined scope, the BIA might miss critical functions, or the RA might overlook significant threats, leading to an incomplete and ineffective BCMS. The chosen approach, therefore, must prioritize establishing a clear and comprehensive scope as a foundational element of the project plan. This ensures that the subsequent phases of BCMS implementation are targeted and relevant to the organization's overall business continuity objectives. The project plan should also consider resource allocation, timelines, and communication strategies, but the initial definition of scope is paramount for the success of the entire implementation project. Question 15. When preparing to present the findings of a Business Impact Analysis, BIA, to the Executive Steering Committee for a multinational logistics firm, what specific element, derived directly from the BIA process, is paramount for demonstrating the tangible business consequences of potential disruptions and justifying the proposed continuity strategies? Option A. A comparative analysis of historical incident response times from unrelated operational areas, used to infer potential recovery timelines for critical business processes. Option B. The aggregated maximum tolerable periods of disruption, MTPOD, for all identified critical business processes, presented alongside the potential financial and reputational impacts of exceeding these periods. Option C. A qualitative assessment of employee morale during previous minor operational disruptions, without quantifying the impact on productivity or recovery efforts. Option D. A detailed breakdown of all IT infrastructure dependencies identified for each business function, irrespective of their criticality level, to ensure comprehensive coverage. Correct answer is B. The aggregated maximum tolerable periods of disruption, MTPOD, for all identified critical business processes, presented alongside the potential financial and reputational impacts of exceeding these periods. Explanation. The Business Impact Analysis, BIA, report is a foundational document in establishing a business continuity management system, BCMS, according to ISO 22301-2019. It systematically identifies an organization's critical business functions, the potential impact of disruptions on these functions, and the required recovery time objectives, RTO, and maximum tolerable periods of disruption, MTPOD. The BIA process involves analyzing activities, dependencies, both internal and external, resource requirements, and the cascading effects of a disruption. The output of the BIA is crucial for informing the subsequent stages of BCMS development, particularly the business continuity strategy and plan development. Presenting the BIA findings effectively to stakeholders, including senior management, requires a clear articulation of the business risks, the prioritization of critical functions, and the rationale behind the determined RTOs and MTPOD. This presentation should highlight the business consequences of non-compliance with regulatory requirements, such as data privacy laws or industry-specific operational mandates, and how the BCMS, informed by the BIA, addresses these. The report's findings should be actionable, providing a clear basis for resource allocation and investment in business continuity capabilities. It is essential that the BIA process and its reporting are conducted in a manner that ensures the accuracy and completeness of the information used to guide the organization's resilience efforts. Question 16. A multinational logistics firm, Global Freight Solutions, is developing its BCMS testing schedule according to ISO 22301-2019. Their business impact analysis identified several critical supply chain nodes, and their recovery time objectives, RTO, range from 4 hours to 48 hours. The firm operates in multiple jurisdictions with varying regulatory oversight concerning operational resilience, which foundational element, derived directly from the BCMS policy and objectives, should primarily drive the initial structuring of this testing schedule. Option A. The number of employees available to participate in testing exercises and their current workload schedules. Option B. The personal preferences of the business continuity manager and the perceived urgency of specific threat scenarios. Option C. The availability of budget allocated for testing activities and the procurement of specialized simulation software. Option D. The defined business continuity objectives and the scope of the BCMS as established during the planning phase. Correct answer is D. The defined business continuity objectives and the scope of the BCMS as established during the planning phase. Explanation. The creation of a testing schedule for a business continuity management system, BCMS, under ISO 22301, 2019 requires a systematic approach that considers various factors to ensure effectiveness and efficiency. The schedule should be based on a thorough understanding of the organization's business continuity policy and objectives, as outlined in Clause 5.2 of the standard. It needs to reflect the scope of the BCMS and the identified business continuity objectives, which are derived from the results of the Business Impact Analysis (BIA) and Risk Assessment (RA). The frequency and type of tests should be determined by the criticality of the business functions, the identified risks, the complexity of the business continuity solutions, and any legal or regulatory requirements, such as those mandated by industry-specific regulations or data protection laws like GDPR, if applicable to the organization's operations. The schedule should also consider the availability of resources, including personnel and testing facilities, and the need to minimize disruption to normal operations. A phased approach, starting with simpler tests and progressing to more complex exercises, is often beneficial. The schedule should be documented and communicated to all relevant stakeholders, and it must be reviewed and updated periodically to ensure it remains relevant and effective. The standard emphasizes that tests and exercises should be conducted at planned interval to maintain the BCMS effectiveness. Question 17. Consider a scenario where a cyber attack targets a financial institution, encrypting critical customer databases and rendering online banking services inoperable for an extended period. This incident also leads to a significant data breach, exposing sensitive personal information of millions of clients, resulting in widespread public outcry and regulatory investigations. Which of the following best characterizes this situation as a crisis according to ISO 22301, 2019 principles? Option A. A minor operational setback that requires immediate attention but does not fundamentally challenge the organization's ability to operate or its long-term viability. Option B. A localized technical failure that, while inconvenient, can be resolved through standard IT support procedures and has minimal impact on overall business operations. Option C. A severe disruption to critical business functions, posing a significant threat to the organization's reputation, financial stability, and operational continuity, necessitating a comprehensive and strategic response. Option D. An isolated event affecting a non-critical department, manageable through departmental contingency plans without broader organizational implications or public attention. The correct answer is C. A severe disruption to critical business functions, posing a significant threat to the organization's reputation, financial stability, and operational continuity, necessitating a comprehensive and strategic response. Explanation. The core of defining a crisis within the context of ISO 22301-2019 lies in understanding its potential impact on an organization's ability to continue its operations at an acceptable level. A crisis is not merely an incident. It is an incident that escalates to a point where it threatens the fundamental viability and reputation of the organization. This escalation is typically characterized by a significant disruption to critical business functions, potentially leading to severe financial losses, damage to brand image, legal liabilities, and even the cessation of operations if not managed effectively. The standard emphasizes the need to identify and assess potential disruptions, and a crisis represents the extreme end of this spectrum, where the normal operational framework is overwhelmed. It requires a coordinated and strategic response that goes beyond routine incident management, often involving senior leadership and external stakeholders. The impact is usually widespread, affecting multiple facets of the organization and its environment. The key differentiator is the magnitude of the threat and the potential for long-term, potentially existential damage. Question 18. Ethelred Technologies, a manufacturer of advanced optical sensors, identifies its sole supplier of a specialized photonic crystal as a critical dependency. This component is integral to their flagship product, and the supplier, located in a region prone to seismic activity, recently suffered a catastrophic facility failure due to an earthquake. The business continuity team has confirmed that the disruption will be lengthy, significantly impacting Ethelred's production capacity. As the BC lead implementer, what is the most strategically sound initial action to address this identified single point of failure in the supply chain, aligning with ISO 22301, 2019 principles for supply chain continuity? Option A. Initiate a formal process to identify, evaluate, and onboard at least 2 alternative suppliers for the specialized photonic crystal. Option B. Begin feasibility studies for developing an in-house manufacturing capability for the specialized photonic crystal to achieve vertical integration. Option C. Significantly increase the organization's buffer stock of the photonic crystal to a 6-month supply, assuming the supplier can eventually resume production. Option D. Negotiate enhanced service level agreements with the current supplier, including priority restoration clauses and penalty clauses for non-performance. Correct answer is A. Initiate a formal process to identify, evaluate, and onboard at least 2 alternative suppliers for the specialized photonic crystal. Explanation. The scenario describes an organization, Ethelred Technologies, that relies heavily on a single critical supplier for a unique component essential for its primary product. This supplier experiences a prolonged disruption due to an unforeseen natural disaster. The organization's Business Continuity Plan, BCP, has identified this supplier as a single point of failure for its supply chain. ISO 22301, 2019, specifically in Clause 8.3.2, mandates the identification and assessment of supply chain dependencies and the development of strategies to mitigate disruption. The question asks for the most appropriate initial action for Ethelred Technologies, BC lead implementer, to take in response to this identified vulnerability and impending disruption. The core principle here is proactive risk management and the establishment of resilience within the supply chain. While immediate response to the current disruption is crucial, the long-term solution for a single point of failure lies in diversification. Therefore, the most effective initial strategic action to address the identified vulnerability of a single critical supplier is to actively seek and qualify alternative suppliers. This reduces the organization's dependence on any one entity, thereby enhancing its overall supply chain resilience. Other actions, such as enhancing inventory levels, might provide short-term relief but do not address the fundamental structural weakness. Negotiating service level agreements, SLAs, is important, but it assumes the current supplier can meet them, which is not guaranteed during a disaster. Developing an in-house alternative is a significant undertaking and not typically the first step for a single point of failure in a supply chain context. It's a more advanced or last resort strategy. The emphasis in ISO 22301 is on understanding and managing these dependencies through appropriate controls, and supplier diversification is a primary control for supply chain risks. Question 19. When an organization is undergoing an external audit to verify its ISO 22301, 2019 compliance, what is the fundamental objective for presenting records detailing the participation and outcomes of business continuity exercises and the training provided to BCMS personnel? Option A. Provide a comprehensive list of all potential risks identified during the business impact analysis and risk assessment phases. Option B. To furnish objective evidence demonstrating the competence of personnel and the effectiveness of the business continuity management system's capabilities. Option C. To document the financial expenditure allocated to business continuity training and exercise activities for budget reconciliation. Option D. To illustrate the chronological progression of the organization's business continuity maturity over the past 5 years. The correct answer is B. To furnish objective evidence demonstrating the competence of personnel and the effectiveness of the business continuity management system's capabilities. Explanation. The requirement for maintaining records of training and exercises within an ISO 22301, 2019 compliant business continuity management system, BCMS, is rooted in demonstrating the effectiveness and ongoing development of the organization's business continuity capabilities. Clause 8.3.2, Business Continuity Capabilities, mandates that the organization shall determine and maintain the necessary capabilities to support its business continuity strategy and policy. This includes ensuring personnel are competent through appropriate education, training, and experience. Clause 7.2, Competence, explicitly states that the organization shall determine the necessary competence for persons doing work under its control that affects its BCMS performance, and shall ensure these persons are competent on the basis of appropriate education, training, or experience. Furthermore, Clause 9.1, Monitoring, measurement, analysis, and evaluation, implies the need for evidence to demonstrate BCMS performance. Maintaining records of training and exercises serves as crucial evidence for several reasons. It validates that personnel have received the necessary instruction and practical experience to perform their BCMS roles effectively. It allows for the assessment of training effectiveness and identification of gaps. It supports the internal and external audit processes by providing objective evidence of compliance with competence requirements, and it contributes to the continuous improvement of the BCMS by informing future training needs and exercise design. Therefore, the primary purpose of these records is to provide objective evidence of competence and the effectiveness of the BCMS. Question 20. An organization has established a recovery point objective RPO of 15 minutes for its critical customer relationship management CRM system, a key component of its business continuity strategy aligned with ISO 22301-2019. What is the minimum required frequency for backing up the data associated with this CRM system to meet this RPO? Option A, every 24 hours or more frequently. Option B, every 1 hour or more frequently. Option C, every 30 minutes or more frequently. Option D, every 15 minutes or more frequently. The correct answer is D, every 50 minutes or more frequently. Explanation. The question probes the understanding of the relationship between recovery point objective RPO and the frequency of data backups, specifically in the context of ISO 22301-2019. The RPO defines the maximum acceptable period in which data can be lost after an incident. If an organization aims for an RPO of 15 minutes, it means that the business process should be able to tolerate the loss of no more than 15 minutes of data. To achieve this, data must be backed up at least as frequently as the RPO dictates. Therefore, if the RPO is 15 minutes, backups must occur every 15 minutes or more frequently. This ensures that, in the event of a disruption, the most recent data available for recovery will not exceed the 15-minute threshold. The concept of recovery time objective, RTO, is also relevant as it specifies the maximum tolerable downtime, but the question specifically focuses on data loss, which is directly governed by the RPO and backup frequency. Understanding this direct correlation is fundamental for designing effective data backup strategies that align with business continuity requirements as stipulated by ISO 22301-2019. Question 21. A lead implementer is overseeing the revision of a critical business continuity plan for a financial services firm operating under stringent regulatory requirements, including those related to data integrity and operational resilience. Following a comprehensive review and approval process, the updated plan is ready for deployment. To uphold the principles of ISO 22301-2019 and regulatory compliance, what is the most critical action the implementer must ensure is taken regarding the previous version of the plan? Option A. Ensure the superseded version is clearly identified as obsolete and removed from active access points. Option B. Archive the previous version in a separate, password-protected cloud storage solution for historical reference. Option C. Initiate a formal document destruction protocol for the previous version immediately upon approval of the new plan. Option D. Distribute the previous version to all departmental heads for their understanding of the changes made. Correct answer is A. Ensure the superseded version is clearly identified as obsolete and removed from active access points. Explanation. The ISO 22301-2019 standard emphasizes the need for effective document control to ensure that information used within the Business Continuity Management System, BCMS, is accurate, up-to-date, and accessible. Clause 7.5.3, Control of Documented Information, outlines the requirements for this. It mandates that documented information required by the standard and by the organization's BCMS must be controlled. This control includes aspects like identification, format, review and approval, distribution, access, retrieval, storage, protection, retention, and disposition. When considering the lifecycle of a business continuity plan, BCP revision, the process of updating the document involves several steps. Initially, a change request might be submitted, followed by a review by the responsible BCMS personnel. Once approved, the revised plan needs to be formally published and disseminated. Crucially, superseded versions must be prevented from unintended use, which is a core tenet of document control. This prevention is typically achieved through clear version control, archiving, or removal from active distribution channels. Therefore, ensuring that the previous version of the BCP is clearly marked as obsolete and is no longer readily available for operational use is paramount to maintaining the integrity of the BCMS and preventing reliance on outdated procedures. Question 22. When developing the internal audit program for a newly established business continuity management system conforming to ISO 22301-2019, what primary factor should a lead implementer prioritize to ensure the audit's efficacy in assessing conformity and operational effectiveness? Considering the organization operates in a highly regulated financial sector with stringent data privacy laws. Option A. Ensuring auditors possess documented evidence of understanding the BCMS framework, ISO 22301-2019 requirements, and relevant financial sector regulations impacting business continuity. Option B. Selecting auditors based solely on their extensive experience in conducting general management system audits across various industries, irrespective of BCMS specialization. Option C. Focusing the audit plan exclusively on the business impact analysis and risk assessment phases, as these are foundational to the BCMS. Option D. Prioritizing auditors who have been recently certified as ISO 22301-2019 internal auditors, with less emphasis on their practical experience or understanding of sector-specific compliance. The correct answer is A. Ensuring auditors possess documented evidence of understanding the BCMS framework, ISO 22301-2019 requirements, and relevant financial sector regulations impacting business continuity. Explanation: the internal audit process for a business continuity management system, BCMS, under ISO 22301-2019 requires a systematic approach to verify the effectiveness and conformity of the implemented BCMS. Clause 9.2. Internal audit mandates that an organization shall conduct internal audits at planned intervals to provide information on whether the BCMS conforms to the organization's own requirements for the BCMS and to the requirements of ISO 22301. It also requires that the results of internal audits are reported to relevant management. A critical aspect of planning these audits is ensuring the competence of the auditors. Competence, as defined in ISO 22301-2019, includes education, training, experience, and skills. For internal auditors, this means understanding BCMS principles, the ISO 22301 standard, relevant legislation and regulatory requirements, such as data protection laws or industry-specific regulations that might impact business continuity, and audit methodologies. The audit plan should consider the status and importance of processes and the results of previous audits. When planning the scope and methodology, the lead implementer must ensure that the audit program covers all aspects of the BCMS over a defined period, taking into account the organization's risk assessment and the outcomes of management reviews. The selection of auditors should be based on their ability to conduct audits objectively and impartially, ensuring that auditors do not audit their own work. Therefore, to effectively plan and conduct internal audits, a lead implementer must prioritize the auditor's demonstrated understanding of the BCMS framework, the specific standard, and the organization's operational context, including applicable legal and regulatory obligations. Question 23. During a comprehensive gap analysis for a financial services firm aiming for ISO 22301-2019 certification, the lead implementer discovers that while the organization has a documented business continuity policy and has conducted a business impact analysis, BIA, has not formally identified and documented the specific requirements of all relevant interested parties concerning business continuity, nor has it established a clear scope for its BCMS that aligns with its strategic objectives, which specific ISO 22301-2019 clause is most critically unaddressed by these findings, necessitating immediate attention in the gap analysis report. Option A. 4 BCMS requirements for the organization. Option B. 2 competence. Option C. 2 business continuity planning. Option D. 1 leadership and commitment. The correct answer is A. 4. 4 BCMS requirements for the organization. Explanation. The core of a gap analysis against ISO 22301-2019 is to identify where an organization's current business continuity management system, BCMS, deviates from the requirements of the standard. Clause 4. 4. Context of the organization. Mandates understanding the organization's needs and expectations of interested parties, as well as defining the scope of the BCMS. A robust gap analysis must therefore first establish a clear baseline of existing BCMS practices, and then systematically compare these against each clause of the standard. The output of this process is a list of nonconformities and areas for improvement. Identifying the specific clauses and subclauses where gaps exist is fundamental. For instance, if an organization has not documented its interested parties and their relevant requirements concerning business continuity, this represents a gap against 4. 1. Furthermore, the analysis must consider the organization's specific operational context and regulatory environment, which are also addressed in Clause 4. 2. Understanding the needs and expectations of interested parties. The primary purpose is to pinpoint the specific deviations from the standard's explicit requirements to inform the development of a BCMS that conforms to ISO 22301-2019. This involves a detailed review of policies, procedures, and evidence of implementation. Question 24. During the review of a business continuity plan for a multinational logistics firm, a significant disruption to a key overseas port was managed with minimal impact due to an underutilized alternative route. This situation highlighted the potential for this alternative route to become a primary operational pathway, thereby reducing reliance on the affected port and potentially offering cost efficiencies. Considering the principles of ISO 22301-2019, which of the following best describes the organization's action regarding this situation as an opportunity within the BCMS? Option A. Formally incorporating the underutilized alternative route into the primary operational strategy and updating the BCMS documentation to reflect this enhanced resilience and efficiency. Option B. Identifying the alternative route as a potential risk mitigation strategy for future disruptions without formal integration into daily operations. Option C. Recommending that the affected overseas port improve its own resilience measures as a consequence of the incident. Option D. Conducting a post-incident review solely to document the successful activation of the alternative route as a reactive measure. Correct answer is A. Formally incorporating the underutilized alternative route into the primary operational strategy and updating the BCMS documentation to reflect this enhanced resilience and efficiency. Explanation. The ISO 22301-2019 standard emphasizes a proactive approach to risk management, which includes identifying and addressing both risks and opportunities. Clause 6. 1. Actions to address risks and opportunities. Mandates that an organization shall establish, implement, and maintain processes to determine risks and opportunities that need to be addressed to provide assurance that the Business Continuity Management System, BCMS, can achieve its intended outcomes and to prevent undesirable effects. This involves considering the issues referred to in 4. 1. Context of the organization and the requirements referred to in 4. 2. Needs and expectations of interested parties. The identification of opportunities, in particular, focuses on potential positive outcomes that can enhance the BCMS effectiveness or contribute to achieving organizational objectives during or after a disruptive incident. For example, an opportunity might arise from a minor disruption that, when managed effectively, reveals weaknesses in a supplier's resilience, leading to a strategic partnership for improved supply chain continuity. Or it could be the chance to implement a more robust remote working capability during a localized incident that, post-incident, becomes a permanent, efficiency-boosting operational model. This strategic foresight is crucial for continuous improvement and for leveraging disruptive events as catalysts for positive change within the BCMS framework. The core of addressing opportunities is to actively seek out and capitalize on situations that can strengthen the organization's resilience and operational capacity beyond simply mitigating threats. Question 25. When evaluating potential business continuity strategies for a global financial services firm that handles sensitive client data, Which primary factor should guide the selection of a recovery solution to ensure compliance with data privacy regulations and maintain operational integrity during a significant disruption? Option A. The demonstrated ability of the strategy to meet or exceed the defined recovery time objectives RTO and recovery point objectives RPO for critical financial transaction processing, while also adhering to data residency and sovereignty laws applicable to client information. Option B. The vendor's reputation for providing generic disaster recovery services without specific validation of their capacity to meet the unique RTO/RPO requirements of high-frequency trading platforms or regulatory compliance mandates. Option C. The familiarity of the IT support staff with the proposed technology, prioritizing ease of management and rapid deployment over the specific recovery capabilities for critical business functions. Option D. The cost-effectiveness of the strategy in terms of initial implementation and ongoing maintenance, assuming a moderate level of data loss is acceptable to minimize immediate financial outlay. Correct answer is A. The demonstrated ability of the strategy to meet or exceed the defined recovery time objectives, RTO, and recovery point objectives, RPO, for critical financial transaction processing, while also adhering to data residency and sovereignty laws applicable to client information. Explanation. The selection of business continuity strategies is fundamentally driven by the analysis of business impact and risk assessments. These foundational activities within a business continuity management system, BCMS, identify critical business functions, their dependencies, and the potential consequences of disruption. The recovery time objective RTO and recovery point objective RPO derived from the business impact analysis, BIA, are paramount. RTO dictates the maximum acceptable downtime for a critical activity, while RPO specifies the maximum acceptable data loss. Strategies must be capable of meeting these defined objectives. For instance, a strategy for a critical online service with a very low RTO and RPO would necessitate a high availability solution, such as active-active data centers, whereas a less critical administrative process with a longer RTO might be adequately served by a less resource-intensive strategy like manual workarounds or periodic data backups. Regulatory requirements, such as data retention laws or industry-specific operational mandates, also play a significant role in shaping strategy selection, ensuring compliance and mitigating legal or reputational risks. The availability of resources, including financial investment, personnel expertise, and technological infrastructure, further constrains and informs the feasibility of different strategic options. Ultimately, the chosen strategies must represent a balance between achieving the required resilience and managing costs and complexity effectively, aligning with the organization's overall risk appetite and strategic goals. Question 26. During a post-incident review for a major disruption, a key third-party logistics provider, whose services are integral to the organization's supply chain resilience, voiced significant apprehension regarding the clarity and timeliness of information received from the organization's business continuity team during the event. This provider, subject to stringent regulatory oversight regarding their own operational continuity, is now questioning the robustness of the organization's communication protocols for external parties. Considering ISO 22301/2019 requirements for stakeholder engagement and communication, what strategic action should the organization prioritize to address this provider's concerns and enhance future external stakeholder communication during a crisis? Option A. Conduct an internal audit of the business continuity team's communication procedures and implement corrective actions based solely on internal findings, subsequently informing the provider of the improvements. Option B. Issue a formal statement to all external stakeholders, including the logistics provider, outlining the organization's adherence to ISO 22301/2019 communication clauses and reiterating existing communication channels. Option C. Request the logistics provider to submit their own incident communication plan for review, with the understanding that the organization will align its communication efforts to match the provider's existing framework. Option D. Initiate a joint workshop with the logistics provider to collaboratively review and refine the business continuity communication plan, focusing on information flow, contact points, and trigger mechanisms for external notifications. The correct answer is D. Initiate a joint workshop with the logistics provider to collaboratively review and refine the business continuity communication plan, focusing on information flow, contact points, and trigger mechanisms for external notifications. Explanation: the core of effective stakeholder engagement in business continuity management, BCM, under ISO 22301-2019 lies in understanding their diverse needs, expectations, and influence. Clause 4. 2. Understanding the needs and expectations of interested parties mandates the identification of all relevant stakeholders and their requirements concerning the organization's business continuity capabilities. Clause 7. 3. Awareness, and Clause 7. 4. Communication further emphasize the importance of informing and engaging these parties appropriately and considering a scenario where a critical supplier, vital for maintaining operational resilience, expresses concerns about the organization's ability to meet its contractual obligations during a disruption. The most effective approach prioritizes direct, transparent, and collaborative communication. This involves not only informing them of the BC plan's existence, but also actively soliciting their input on potential integration points and dependencies. This collaborative approach fosters trust, ensures alignment of expectations, and can identify potential vulnerabilities or enhancements to the BC plan that might otherwise be overlooked. Simply providing generic updates or relying solely on formal contractual clauses would fail to address the supplier's underlying concerns and potentially damage a crucial relationship. The focus is on building a shared understanding and commitment to mutual resilience, which goes beyond mere compliance. Question 27. When establishing the business continuity policy for a newly certified organization operating in the financial services sector, which of the following considerations is paramount for ensuring alignment with ISO 22301-2019 and relevant regulatory mandates? Option A. Ensuring the policy explicitly addresses the organization's commitment to maintaining critical financial transaction processing capabilities and compliance with sector-specific regulations like the Payment Services Directive. Option B. Focusing solely on internal operational recovery procedures without acknowledging external dependencies or stakeholder communication protocols. Option C. Documenting the policy in a manner that is easily accessible to all employees through the company intranet, regardless of its specific content. Option D. Including a broad statement about general resilience without detailing specific critical functions or regulatory adherence. The correct answer is A. Ensuring the policy explicitly addresses the organization's commitment to maintaining critical financial transaction processing capabilities and compliance with sector-specific regulations like the Payment Services Directive. Explanation: the establishment of a business continuity policy is a foundational step in implementing an ISO 22301-2019 compliant business continuity management system, BCMS. Clause 5. 2. Policy of the standard mandates that the top management shall establish a business continuity policy that is appropriate to the purpose and context of the organization and supports its strategic direction. The policy serves as a high-level statement of intent and direction regarding business continuity. It must be communicated and understood throughout the organization. Crucially, the policy needs to be reviewed at planned intervals to ensure its continued suitability. The policy's scope, objectives, and commitment to continual improvement are key elements. It should also consider relevant legal and regulatory requirements applicable to the organization, such as data protection laws, e.g., GDPR, CCPA, or industry-specific regulations that might impact operational continuity. The policy's effectiveness is not just in its existence, but in its integration into the organization's culture and operations, guiding decision-making during disruptive events, and ensuring the BCMS remains aligned with organizational needs and objectives. Therefore, a policy that is merely a generic statement without specific reference to the organization's context, strategic objectives, or legal obligations would be considered insufficient for effective BCMS implementation. Question 28. A lead implementer is guiding an organization through the development of its business continuity management system. During the business impact analysis, BIA, phase, the team has identified critical business activities, their interdependencies, and the potential consequences of their disruption. to effectively select appropriate recovery strategies that align with business needs and regulatory compliance, which specific output from the BIA serves as the most direct and crucial input for determining the necessary recovery capabilities and timelines. Option A. Quantified Recovery Time Objectives, RTO, and Maximum Tolerable Downtime, MTD, for critical business functions. Option B. A detailed inventory of all IT hardware and software assets currently in use by the organization. Option C. A comprehensive list of all potential threats and vulnerabilities identified during the initial planning phase. Option D. A qualitative assessment of stakeholder satisfaction level during previous minor disruptions. The correct answer is A. Quantified Recovery Time Objectives, RTO, and Maximum Tolerable Downtime, MTD, for critical business functions. Explanation. The core of a business impact analysis, BIA, is to identify and prioritize critical business functions and their dependencies, and to determine the maximum tolerable downtime, MTD, and recovery time objectives, RTO, for each. The BIA also quantifies the impact of disruption over time. A risk assessment, conversely, focuses on identifying potential threats and vulnerabilities that could disrupt these functions and evaluating the likelihood and impact of these threats occurring. Recovery strategies are then developed based on the outputs of both the BIA and risk assessment to meet the defined RTOs and RPOs. The question asks about the primary output of the BIA that directly informs the selection of recovery strategies. While identifying dependencies and potential impacts are crucial BIA activities, the most direct input for strategy selection, particularly regarding the timeframe for recovery, are the RTO and MTD. These metrics establish the performance requirements for any chosen recovery solution. For example, if a critical function has an RTO of 4 hours, the recovery strategy must be capable of restoring it within that timeframe. Similarly, the MTD indicates the absolute limit before unacceptable consequences occur, further guiding the urgency and type of strategy. Therefore, the quantified recovery objectives derived from the BIA are the foundational elements for designing effective recovery solutions. Question 29. Consider a scenario where a major cyber attack has incapacitated a financial institution's core transaction processing system, impacting its ability to serve customers and execute trades. The organization has activated its business continuity plan. What is the most critical element to prioritize in the immediate communication strategy to maintain stakeholder confidence and operational stability, adhering to ISO 22301/2019 principles? Option A. Establishing a clear, consistent, and timely flow of verified information to all affected internal and external stakeholders regarding the incident's impact and the ongoing response. Option B. Immediately launching a public relations campaign to highlight the organization's resilience and long-term stability, irrespective of immediate operational status. Option C. Focusing solely on internal employee communication to ensure operational readiness for recovery, delaying external stakeholder updates until a full resolution is achieved. Option D. Disseminating detailed technical information about the cyber attack's nature and origin to demonstrate transparency to regulatory bodies and cybersecurity experts. The correct answer is A. Establishing a clear, consistent, and timely flow of verified information to all affected internal and external stakeholders regarding the incident's impact and the ongoing response. Explanation. The effectiveness of communication during a disruption hinges on several critical factors outlined in ISO 22301/2019. The standard emphasizes the need for a predefined communication plan that addresses who needs to be informed, what information they require, when they need it, and through which channels. This plan must consider various stakeholders, including employees, customers, suppliers, regulatory bodies, and the media. The content of the communication should be accurate, timely, and consistent, reflecting the organization's response strategy and providing clear guidance. The choice of communication channels must account for potential infrastructure failures, ensuring redundancy and accessibility. For instance, if primary communication systems like email are unavailable, alternative methods such as SMS, dedicated hotlines, or a crisis communication website become crucial. The plan should also incorporate feedback mechanisms to monitor the effectiveness of communications and address any misinformation or concerns. Therefore, a comprehensive approach involves not just the message itself, but also the strategy for its delivery and reception, ensuring it aligns with the organization's overall business continuity objectives and complies with relevant legal and regulatory notification requirements, such as those pertaining to data breaches or critical service interruptions. Question 30. A multinational logistics firm, Global Freight Solutions, is preparing to exercise its BCMS. They have identified a significant risk of a cyber attack targeting their primary customer relationship management (CRM) system, which is critical for managing client communications and order fulfillment. The firm operates under stringent data protection regulations in multiple jurisdictions, including the GDPR. The exercise scenario needs to effectively test the BCMS response to this specific threat, including the implications of regulatory compliance during a crisis. Which approach to scenario development would best align with ISO 22301/2019 requirements for exercising and testing, while also reflecting the firm's operational context and regulatory environment. Option A. Design an exercise focused on a natural disaster, such as a severe flood, impacting the primary distribution hub and requiring the rerouting of shipments and the activation of a temporary operational facility. Option B. Create a scenario involving a localized power outage at the main data center that disrupts IT operations, forcing the activation of backup power and the relocation of critical staff to an alternate site. Option C. Construct a scenario simulating a key supplier's insolvency, leading to a disruption in the availability of essential components and requiring the identification and onboarding of alternative suppliers. Option D. Develop a scenario where a ransomware attack encrypts the CRM database, necessitating the activation of the data restoration procedures and requiring the communication of a data breach to relevant supervisory authorities within the mandated timeframe. Correct answer is D. Develop a scenario where a ransomware attack encrypts the CRM database, necessitating the activation of the data restoration procedures and requiring the communication of a data breach to relevant supervisory authorities within the mandated timeframe. Explanation. The purpose of exercising a business continuity management system, BCMS, is to validate the effectiveness of business continuity plans, BCP, and the readiness of personnel. ISO 22301/2019, in Clause 8. 4. Mandates that an organization shall conduct exercises and tests of its BCMS at planned intervals. The level of detail and complexity of these exercises should be commensurate with the organization's objectives for exercising and the potential impact of disruptions. When developing exercise scenarios, a critical consideration is to ensure they are realistic and relevant to the organization's identified risks and potential disruptions, as outlined in Clause 6. 1. 2. This realism allows for a true assessment of the BCMS capabilities. The scenarios should also be designed to test specific aspects of the BCMS, such as incident response, communication protocols, and recovery procedures, rather than being overly broad or unmanageable. The integration of simulated external factors, like regulatory notification requirements or the impact of a specific piece of legislation on operations, adds a layer of complexity that mirrors real-world challenges. This approach helps to identify gaps in the BCMS that might not be apparent in simpler exercises and ensures that the organization is prepared for a wider range of disruptive events, thereby enhancing overall resilience. The selection of scenarios should also consider the organization's learning objectives for the exercise, ensuring that the outcome provides valuable insights for improvement.